Okay, and welcome back, students who are taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications, and we are still doing the Chapter 12 drill problems, the odd numbered problems. We're going to be working on the 12-7 to 12-9, which are the last 12-9 and 12-11. I should be able to get through them in this video. Okay, we skipped over doing these problems because in the last video there was the explanation for the business math handbook. Okay, so we're picking up where we left off. Okay, so it says for drill problem 12-7, you complete the following using the present value table, 12-12.3, or the present value table in the business math handbook. Okay, so 12-7 is for $6,000. I didn't put the problems on the side here because I just ran out of screen real estate here. So we'll just work with the $6,000 for the length of time being 8 years at the rate of 3%, and it's compounded semi-annually. Okay, so on the present value table, 12.3, the period we are going to use is going to be, all right, since this is compounded annually, so that means that's twice a year. So remember, for the length of time, it's times, and for the rate, we divide. Okay, so 8 times 2 means the period used is 16, and the rate used, so 3% divided by 2 gives us 1.5%. Okay. So the present value factor used, when we can do this in one of two ways. We can jump up to the present value table that's in the textbook. Here's 1.5% for 16 periods, and that gives us a factor of 0.7880. So let me write that in here. That's 0.7880. Or if we went down to the business math handbook, we would be looking at the present value, which would be on pages 1 to 30, and we would look for the page that had 1.5%. Okay. And then when we find that page, we look at the number of periods, and we come down to 16 periods, and we would then go over to our present value, because this is table 12-3, the present value, and we can see that we have the same exact factor, 0.7880. So yeah, this particular problem, we could use both the table in the textbook, or we can use the business math handbook. Okay, so let me go back up to the problem, and it says we're going to look at the present value of the amount desired at the end of the period. So to arrive at that, we take our $6,000 and we multiply that by our factor of 0.7880, and that gives us a total amount of $4,728 even. So that's 4,728 even. So that's the present value of the desired amount at the end of the period. And if you think about that, let me erase this here and just draw a timeline. Okay, so this is the present and this is the future value, and it's saying the amount desired at the end of the period. So at the end of the period, it's $6,000. Well, obviously, if I'm going to invest, today and get interest, that means the amount that I am going to invest has to be less than 6,000. Right? So in this case here, that amount is going to be 4,728. Right? But realize that and remember, if you're thinking and you happen to use the wrong table, okay, if you happen to use the future value table, if you use, say, and I'm just going to guess at a factor here, 6,000 times, I don't know, 1.1250, okay? Well, that amount is going to be greater than $6,000, okay? So how could it be, more than $6,000 as a present value and only be $6,000 when you get into the future if you're collecting interest? It can't be. So you know you're using the wrong table, okay? Just keep this in the back of your mind when you're doing the problems. Okay, so 12-9, we have $17,600 at 7 years, 12%, and that's compounded quarterly. So remember, quarterly is 4 times a year. Okay. So the period used, if I have 7 years times the four quarters in a year, that's 28 periods. And for the rate, if I have 12% and I divide that by 4, that gives me 3%. Okay. So I'm going to need to look at 3% for 28 periods. Now, like I had said, I have a tendency to use the tables in the book, the textbook. Okay, so that's the one I'm going to be using here. But at times you're going to need to use the Business Math Handbook. So just be aware of that. It'll end up being the same thing. All right, so we ended up with 3%, and we had to come down to 28 periods, which means our factor is 0.4371. Okay. So come back down to the problem here. There we go. And so with the problem, and we take the $17,600 times the 0.4321 as the 4371 as the factor. And that equals $7,692.96. Okay, so this is 0.4371, and that's 7,692.96. Okay, so that's how you do those two problems, and using the Business Math Handbook for one of them. Okay, all right. Let's go down to the last drill problem, 12-11. Okay, it says, check your answer in problem 12-9 by the compound value table 12.1. The answer will be off due to rounding. Okay, so this is basically the same thing here, okay, but instead here we're checking our answer by finding the present value. So we had, remember, quarterly is every 4 periods, so the period used was 28 periods, and the rate used was 0.4371. Okay, I'm sorry, the rate used, sorry, wrong. That's wrong. That's the interest rate. Let me erase that. So the rate used was 3%, and the factor was 0.4371, which gave us an amount of $7,600. Come on, ink pen. $692.96. So if we're going to do this in reverse, because we're going to go and do the present value using table 12.1, all right, we're going to use, the future value. So we're saying that our present value is 7,692.96. So now we need to look at the future value table for 28 periods. Okay, and 3%. So here's our 3% column for 28 periods. That gives me a factor of 2.2879. Okay, so that's going to be a factor of 2.2879. and I just want to just double check that. 2879, right? Okay. Sorry for all of the bouncing back and forth, but if I take and I multiply, now, I mean, think about it. You know, here's $7,600, you know, at least 2 times is, you know, 15, right? So I'm using the right table and using the right, you know, the right factor. So if I take 7692.96 and multiply it by 2.2879, I end up with $17,600 and 72 cents, rounded down to 72 cents. Okay, so yeah, you know, I'm off by 72 cents. Remember, my future value amount was $17,600 even. Okay, but due to rounding, okay, and the large numbers in the factors themselves, I'm going to be off by a little bit, and in this case here, 72 cents. So for rounding issues, you know, this $72 is acceptable, right? So even though you had that amount, 76.92.96, and if you were asked to do the math again and you come up with this 72 cents, you know, I mean, it should come out to 17,600, but it's not going to, just due to rounding. So whichever answer you put, you're going to get it correct. Okay. Now, don't misunderstand me here. If you're told to do this problem and do it in reverse, and you know that you're supposed to have 17,600, and if you just put that as the answer, you're going to get it wrong, because as you can see by doing the math, you should have the 72 cents there. If you don't have the 72 cents, then your answers, you know, when you do it in reverse, is actually incorrect. Okay, so that's it for the drill problems, and you know, we'll just move on to the word problems in the next set of videos, and hopefully you understood everything that was going on here. It's not that difficult. It's just a, you know, progression from one chapter to the next, one concept from one concept, building and building, and you'll see the same idea of this present value and future value in the next chapter when we get to chapter 13, but it'll be as far as payments are concerned versus a lump sum like you're dealing with in chapter 12 here. So I will see you all in the next set of videos for the word problems, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact an instructor.